Hello and welcome to a brand new crafting tutorial with myself, Anthony Minnis. In this particular video I'm going to show you how I'm going to go about and paint this little fairy house that I made originally out of a jam jar, its lid and some DAS clay. If you want to have a look at how the fairy house is made, then please look in the description below where there will be a link to that particular video. Otherwise stay tuned to the very end of this video where there will also be a link. If you like the contents of this video, then please click the like button, and if you're not already subscribed to my channel, please click on that as well, and also the notifications button, which will give you a notification every time I upload a brand new video to my YouTube channel. So without further ado, let's get painting this little fairy house. So our little jam jar fairy house is ready to be painted. Now if you've actually watched the video, you'll see that the actual screw part of the lid I have left with no clay on whatsoever. So the idea is that once it's painted, you can put a little battery powered tea light in there, and then you pop that onto the base, you twist it, and then it becomes one full little piece like that. So let's get painting the base to start with, and we'll go and choose some colours. So as this is meant to be the ground, the base, we're going to go for some browns. So we have like almost a terracotta brown here, and then we have a slightly darker brown. Okay, just going to give that a little bit of a mix. Okay, like so. So just give that a little bit of a mix in. I'm going to go over it a little bit anyway, so that's a sort of colour I want. Okay, I could add a little bit of black into that as well. So I'm literally just going to go in there and just start to paint the clay. Leave me to that and I'll be back after I finish the first coat. So I'm just going around here the edge just to make sure that everything is covered. At the moment we've just got a brown on there. I'm going to add some other colours to that once it's dry. But in the meantime we're going to go ahead and grab a couple of different colours of green there just to add some variation to all of those beautiful leaves that are around there. So I'm going to go and just finish off this brown and then I'll start on those leaves. So I have a few different colours of green and I'm just mixing together. Okay, so we don't want it too bright, don't want it too dark, so like an in-between green, if there is such a thing. Okay, and then I'm just going to start painting that on there and get into all those little nooks and crannies. Okay, and also make sure you paint the inside part there. So because this is the first coat, I'm not too worried about getting it perfect, because we can do some dry brushing over the top as well. And also, like halfway through, I'm going to add a little bit more darker shade of green actually into that mix there, just so the whole lot doesn't look all of the same. So again, just leave me to paint the green and then I'll be back in a bit. So that's one lot there that I've done. I'm just going to add a little bit of black into some of this mix. So let's just drag some paint. This is what I normally tend to do. So just drag some of the colour out from the main bit. We're just going to add a little bit of black into that. That should be enough. Maybe that's a little bit on the dark side, but it doesn't. I'm not too bothered. So I just want it to be very different from what is already there. Okay, so yep, that will do fine. So I'm just going to use this now to go over the other leaves, and obviously you can see straight away it's a completely different colour green, which is good. So I'm just going to go ahead and do these leaves, and then again we'll change the colour every so often just so it doesn't all look the same. Okay, so that's 2 of the elements done. I'm just going to again change that colour just to make it a little bit different again. I think I'm just going to go for a little bit of the original colour back in there. Okay, let's have a look. We don't want to go too wildly different, but just different enough again. Okay. But what we're going to do is sort of like eventually is actually give all of this a black wash to really get into the depths of all of that detail there, and then we're going to sort of like dry brush over the top. So there's lots of different sort of elements to painting this. So again, I'm just going to go onto there and just start painting. So I've overloaded my brush a little bit, and then just go onto there. Okay. The great thing about actually painting moulded parts is actually it's not too difficult to actually paint. You know, the sort of the areas are raised, so it almost guides the brush, which is really, really good. So when you actually look at something that's been painted that's from a mould, you might think, goodness me, that's going to take me a long time to do, but believe me, it doesn't actually take too long, and it is very satisfying as well when you're painting it. Okay, so I'm just going to go and do this element here, and then I'll finish off by doing the final element. So back in a moment. So just the final stages of just doing these leaves. Okay, so you can sort of like see the 4 different colours on there at the moment. These ones around here are a little bit on the bright side, so we will, like I say, with a little bit of dry brushing, just dull that down just a tad. So I'm just going over, just making sure there's not sort of like too many brush strokes on some of those leaves. Okay, and then when I'm happy with the finish, okay, I'm just going to get myself a heat tool and we're just going to dry that off. So when I'm using the heat tool, I just make sure that I don't keep it on one spot for too long, otherwise you could get some of the acrylic paint bubbling up. So just bearing that in mind when you're doing your painting. So just putting the heat gun aside there. So this is what we've actually got at the moment. So we're just going to do a little bit of dry brushing. So this is my colour that I've got at the moment. I'm going to add a little bit more black just to a bit of it. Okay, just down here. I'm just going to mix this in with this brush to start with. Okay, we still want some green colour showing through, like so. Okay, and then this is my famous now dry brush. Okay, well this is one I use for dry brushing. So just dab it on. Like I say, you don't want too much dry brushing. You know, a lot of people do struggle a little bit where it comes to dry brushing, but there's nothing to be frightened of. So it's very little paint on the brush, and then just going in there and just basically just tickling over the moulded areas. Okay, so if you feel that you've got too much paint on there, then just simply just wipe it off, or even get a cloth, okay, and just wipe it off so you can see I have got a fair bit on there. Okay, it's just going back onto there. Okay, and you can see straight away it's just dulling that down a little bit. Okay, so we are going to go over all of this with possibly black paint, just to really tone the whole lot down. Okay, so at the moment I'm just going to go around, I'm just going to dry brush some other colour in until I'm sort of like happy that I've just added a little bit of extra colour here and there and depth, because that's what we're really doing. We're just bringing out the depth there of all of those leaves. Okay, so I'm just going to go in, I'm just going to continue. Right, so now on the dark areas I'm actually going to want to put some of the lighter colour. Okay, so again, to dry brush that on. Whoops, I've just gone over that a little bit there. Let's just take some of that off. So this is now the darker colour base, lighter colour on the brush. Okay. You can see straight away that does just the trick there. It's just bringing out some of that detail. Okay, so I should just keep on going on the rest of this, and then I'll be back to show you how far I've got. So I've just now finished or just about to finish the dry brushing on there. So you can see we've really toned down what was that bright green there. The other ones have toned down as well a little bit. There's just a little bit of definition between them all, which is nice. Okay, and then what we're going to do now is just dry that off in its entirety, and then we're going to put a black wash on it and see what happens then, and then a little bit more dry brushing over the top. So let's just dry it to start with. Okay, we have that now all nice and dry. So now we're going to pop on some black paint in the form of a wash, so it's going to get all rather messy. So I'm just going to apply some black just there. Okay, and then we're going to really get that nice and wet. Okay, so really wanted a nice runny black paint into there. Okay, the more water we can introduce, the better that's going to be. Okay, right, I think that's probably pretty runny. Yeah, it looks like we're going to ruin the whole lot. We might do, yeah. So just literally that is really wet solution of the black. So we're just going to pop that directly on all over the whole lot. Okay, so make sure you get into all the little nooks and crannies there, okay, on your design. And when you're using molded pieces, there's quite a lot of dimension, so just make sure that you go in there and really just wipe that black in like so. Okay, I'm just going to turn that round a little bit. Okay, and then what I'm going to do, I'm just going to dry it a little bit, and then we're going to use a baby wipe over the top. Okay, so we have a baby wipe, and let's just pop that over the top there. Okay, so like I say, we are going to do some more dry brushing, so don't worry, nothing is ruined as such. Okay, just go over that. Okay, what I tend to do, I normally do 2 coats. Okay, so I will dry this one and then I'll go over with another coat. And already you can see there, we've really dulled down like the brown that was around the outside, which is exactly what we want to do. So again, I'm just going to dry this off, and then we'll come back and we'll do a second coat. Okay, so second coat going on. Again, we're just going to add some more water to that black. We don't want it too thick, the paint. Okay, and then just a case of just brushing that on so it goes into all of those little nooks and crannies. Okay, you can see straight away that sort of like ages the piece, and I think just makes it look a little bit more realistic without too many colours like popping. Okay, because this isn't one of those pieces where you want the colours to pop too much. So there we go, just let that dry a little bit. Again, I'm just going to dry with a heat gun, not to completely dry it, just dried enough to wipe some more off. Okay, so I'm just going to dab and just gently wipe that off. Okay, so basically just keep on wiping until you start to see some of the colour coming from underneath there. Okay, and as you can see, that's starting to show through now, but it has really given it that sort of like real aged type look. It looks as though those leaves have been on the ground there for a long time, which is exactly the type of effect that we're wanting to do. So just keep on going until you're happy with the look of it. Okay, and if you feel that you need to go a second time round, then by all means do that. But you can see straight away, you know, it's all looking quite, I say uniform, but it's sort of like just dulled it down a little bit. So no one set of leaves there is really like popping from the other, even though there are different coloured greens under there. Okay, so like I say, once you're happy, then just go with that and dry it. So just leave that with me for a couple of minutes. I'll just finish this off and then we'll dry it, and then we'll start to do a little bit more dry brushing over the top. So as not to waste any of the paint that was here, I've actually coloured the base of the MDF piece as well. So again, just going to let that one dry. So there's the base, and as you can see there, all of the different leaves, just very, very slightly different colours of, or shades should I say, of green. But we're just going to add a little bit more detail to that, and we're actually going to use white acrylic paint. So I'm just going to squeeze a little bit onto the mat here. We're not going to need a lot, okay? And then I'm just going to dry brush, so a little bit on your brush, and then we're really going to knock that off, okay? And we're just going to go on, and we're just going to highlight just some of those leaves there, just the edges, a little bit of detail as well. Okay, and again, hardly any paint on the brush. That's exactly what you want. But you can see there already it's just bringing out some of that detail. When it dries, you know, although we're going on using white paint here, it's not like really a shocking like white, and that's because you are just literally just stroking that brush on just to bring out some of that wonderful detail of the mould. So I'm just going to go and do this in its entirety, and then I'll be back to show you the results. So there we go, that's the white dry brushing, and as you can see, that really does make all of the detail of those leaves just like really stand out. So that is the base just about done. Now I'm going to be using another one of my favourite products, and that's the Stampendous Frantage. So this time I'm going to be using the aged green. That's got a really nice sort of like green in there as well. It's going to work particularly well, I think, for this. So I'm just going to add this to a little couple of places. I'm just going to use a PVA type glue. So just going to add a little bit of that just here and there, just to add a little bit of sparkle to this project down at the base. Okay. So I'm not going to go too wild with it. Just here and there. I'm using a white sheet of paper as well, so I can collect all the frantage that I tap off, all the excess. Okay. So just keep on going around where you want it. So just leave me to do this, and then I'll be back, and then we can melt some of that frantage into place. So now comes the melting of the frantage. I use a more powerful heat tool for this one, but just bear in mind, you know, you've got acrylic paint around there, so don't hold it on the same spot for too long. You don't want that to bubble up. So the frontage has now melted. There's just little bits of it here and there. I'm just going to accentuate that just a little bit by putting some gilding paint just around here as well. So I think I'm going to be using the antique gold from Cadence. I really like the Cadence paints for gilding. So a little tiny bit on the brush, okay, and then we're just going to just flick that onto there. And again, that's going to bring out some of the detail that I originally put on the ground there. I quite like that actually, and it also just tones down the frontage a little bit. Okay, so just brushing that onto there, and it also tones in the frontage as well with everything else that's going on, so that's really nice. So I'm just going to go round. You can see how little of that paint that you actually need. Like I said, it just tones it in really, really nicely with the ground there. Okay, so we've done the ground. I'm still going to just go using the gold again, and I'm just going to just very, very, very lightly just go over some of those leaves, just so it's just catching a little bit of the shimmer. Okay, so we are using the dry brush technique. Okay, and believe me, there is hardly any paint on this at all, but it's just enough so it's not, we're not painting over the white, we're just going onto there just to highlight again just some of that detail that's in that mould. So keep on turning the brush over now and again, and then that's going to work just nicely. So you can see there we're just picking up just a little bit, a little hint there. Okay, so just don't overdo it, and then you'll be good. And if you feel you've got too much, then just simply just wipe it away before it's actually dried. But I'm liking that it's random. Okay, so with the dry brushing technique, you know, you're not going to go over just once, you're going to go over a couple of times. So you're building up the colour. Okay, so into there we go. So leave me to finish this part off, and I'll come back and I'll show you where I've got to. So there we go, there's all the gilding now finished on our base plate. So let's just have a look, and we'll put the two together, the top part and the bottom, and you'll see obviously the difference. Obviously the top part's not painted, but you'll just see the contrast between the two, and you know what we've done to the base here compared to the original colour. So just a quick comparison, and as you can see, you know, that has completely and utterly just transformed that with a little bit of colouring. So we're now going to go to our top part here, and first of all we're just going to paint all of the bark area. We're just going to use a brown, dark brown to start with, and like before, and this is really crucial, it's just all about the dry brushing to really accentuate the detail that is in the moulds. So leave me to it, and I'll be back in a bit after I've painted the majority of the house in a nice dark brown colour. Finishing off the little house that we've got here with the brown for the bark. Okay, and it hasn't really taken me that long, seriously. It's only probably taken less than 10 minutes to do this part so far. So I've gone all the way around there, okay, and we're just about good to go for the next bit. So just make sure you've got quite a good coat or thickness of coat on there. Okay, so you don't want any of the original clay to stand out particularly. Okay, and then once you're happy with that, then just make sure it's completely dry before you go on to the next stage, which I'm about to show you in a couple of moments. So I'm just going to go around, just double check to make sure that everything has got a nice coverage of that paint, and then we can go forward and do the next step. Like the rest of the project, it's all about dry brushing. So we're just going to take a really dark colour brown, and we're just going to go into some of the little nooks and crannies there. Before I do that, also I'm just going to go onto the door frame and the door itself. We're just going to use a slightly different colour of the brown to do that. So that's what I'm going to do next. So I'm just going on with the lighter colour brown that I'm using for the door, and then we'll go over with some of the darker colour in a moment. So really just make sure that when you're painting anything with lots of texture, you really want to get right down into those nooks and crannies there. You don't want to miss anything. Okay, so just really going in there and just making sure that I've got everything pretty much well covered. Okay, so just really go down into that. And where we originally cut the little window, just go around there. Don't worry about if you go onto the glass too much, because we can scratch that off with a scalpel later. Okay, and that's what I'm going to do. So there we go. Okay, that's good. So just go into that. Right, so the door frame itself, I want a dark colour, so I'm just going to leave my light colour there just in case. Okay, I'm just going to go on with a little bit of darker colour. So this is a real nice dark colour wood, and it's going to just stand out completely from the door and also the rest of the fairy house as well. So just give that a really good mix. Obviously we'll be going back in, and then we'll be doing some dry brushing just to bring out some of the beautiful texture that we have even in the door frame. So I'm just going to go in there. That's really quite different. Let's have a look. Yep, that's different enough from the bark. Okay, so I'm just going to go onto there and just go round. So leave me to paint the door frame, and then I'll be back in a moment. Okay, so we've got to this point so far. So you can see there's 3 different colours of the brown at the moment. You've got the light on the door, the really dark on the frame, and then we've got the slightly lighter then on the bark itself. So I'm just going to use some of this colour here. We're just going to add a little bit more black, surprisingly. Okay, so just going to add a little bit more black. Then I'm going to get my trusty brush here. Okay, and I'm just going to mix that in. Okay, so going almost, it's almost black, just a really dark shade now of that brown. Okay, and then what I'm going to want to do is just go in there. Okay, and we're going to sort of like just probably touch in one thing. I'm going to try to dry brush actually. Okay, so just sort of like random parts to it. Okay, so particularly sort of like where you'd expect there to be like shadows from the leaves and that. So just going to go in there. Okay, don't be too precious at the moment. It's just all about building up a little bit of, say, shadow. Okay, so don't worry if your brush spills onto anything else at the moment, it will be fine. Okay, so particularly up there, let's come down. And because bark is what it is, you know, it's not even, so don't worry too much about getting an even coverage of the darker colour. It's going to add to the overall effect. And like we did before with the base, we're probably going to go over the whole lot with black paint as well. And then obviously a little bit of dry brushing over the top. It's all about layering of the paint really to give you that effect. So just keep on just going round until, like I say, you're happy that you've got the sort of shading in the areas that you think need a little bit of shading. Okay. For the bark itself, we're going to go with a lighter colour anyway. So at the moment it's just about accentuating the dark areas of that. Okay, so now we've got this part here. I'm going to go for one of my really fine brushes, and we're just going to go in and add some of that real fine detail onto there. So I'm just going to take a real fine brush, and then I'm just going to go in to some of those real deep crevices on the door. Okay, and just literally just follow them up. Okay, that's what we want to do here. So it's really accentuating where those dark, deep parts are. Okay, so just really fine brush this is. Okay, and just go in there. You can already see, just even by doing that, it just does add to the overall detail. But I'm just going to pay particular attention to the door for a few minutes, and then join us again afterwards when I then just add some more detail into some more areas. So we've now got to this stage here. I've done the door. At the moment, I'll be honest with you, it looks a blooming mess, but we're going to actually whitewash over that. So rather than go for the black, we're actually going to whitewash that. Round the back here we have all of the bark. I'm going to use a light colour just to highlight some of that. So there we go, this colour just about sit just off, near enough off camera there. That's the colour I'm going to use. So let's just start by doing that. Dry brush technique yet again, and we're just going to start just brushing over that just to bring out some of that beautiful bark texture that is there. So just keep on just adding that on there. Like I say, where it comes to dry brushing, it's not about putting it on in one coat. You will need to build that up. As you can see, that's what I'm doing there. So just keep on until again that you're happy with the look. So you can see quite quickly it's just building that up just by adding a little bit of paint on at a time. So this is the lighter colour brand at the moment. You know, maybe afterwards we'll have a look, and it could be that we then need to go over with white. So we'll just bear that in mind. But I'm just going to keep on just building up that colour, because after a time you will also notice that the colour does tend, the colour whipping on top does tend to fade. So just bear that in mind when you're like doing that dry brush technique, just to go back over and just to bring out some more detail with a little bit more colour on your brush. So leave me to do this, and then I should be back in a little while. So there we go, the texture is building up really nicely now on that bark. I'm probably going to go over a couple more times just to help bring it really out. But I'm really pleased with how that mould just is just so realistic. I think I'm right in saying that the actual mould, or the casting, the original casting, was actually made from a piece of bark, and that's why it really does bring out that beautiful texture. Okay, so just going to go around, just have one last look. Okay, like so, just to really highlight that. And then I think I'm going to just go over with a little bit of the white acrylic paint just on its own, just to do a little bit of dry brushing as well. But that is the bark in its entirety, and I think it does work really nicely. I'm also going to add some shadowing back into the top part as well, just using the really dark brown paint. Possibly we won't wash over like we did the entire lot for this part, because I think it's looking quite nice as is. So I'm just going to grab some white, and then we're just going to highlight some of those parts on the bark. So here I am just with the white. Okay, just some of those areas there. And after a time the white doesn't really sort of like show white, if that makes sense. It almost goes transparent, and it just helps highlight without being too garish. Okay, so I don't want it all done, just areas of it. Okay, and that is giving the type of effect that I want. So it's just literally tickling the brush just over some of that texture, again just to help just really highlight it up nicely. And I think, you know, that's going to do it. It's just that small amount. Right, so let's have a look. We can just add a little bit onto a door frame as well, again just randomly onto there, maybe just around the edges, on the ends. Okay, just keep on like so, along the top edge. There we go. And along the bottom there. Right, okay, so that's how we're looking at the moment. Okay, so now we're going to whitewash that door. Okay, so I'm just going to pop that aside. I'm going to get myself a large brush, and then we'll add some white. So I'm adding a lot of water to some white there on my glass mat. We've got our big brush. Okay, and I'm just going to mix that in so it's a real watery paint. So I have to be fairly careful where we're going to go on here, because obviously we don't want to go onto the door frame too much. Don't worry about the glass, as I said, we can scrape the paint off there. So it's just the door itself we're looking at. So we want this piece of wood really to look like it's been around an awful long time. So let's just go into there. Okay, just round a little window and then just onto the top. Okay, so just down that side, just into there if we can do. Okay, right, let's just pop that up like so. Just going to grab myself a baby wipe, and then we're just going to dry that off a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to wipe it off. So let's see if this is going to work. Yeah. Okay. Right. So just wipe that off. Okay. So a little bit up there. Now I'm going to dry that in its entirety, okay, and then we're going to go back over with the whitewash again. So now I'm just going back in and just with a dark brown, I'm just going under a few pieces there just to paint in almost like a little bit of shadowing, just as we did before. Okay, let's just go in there, just add that. It's always very difficult to look at a project like halfway through and like think, you know, is it really going to work? But a lot of the time it is just a case of, you know, you have to apply all of those different paints, all the different colours in their entirety, and then you will see if it's going to work out. But with all projects, you know, if they really don't work out, then just paint over it all with you know, either a white or black gesso and just start again. So, you know, there's no going wrong at the end of the day. Okay, so just go in there and just like I said, just round the edges, okay, just to help bring out some of the shadows. So you just sort of like thinking to yourself, where would there be shadows? So we're looking sort of like with the light coming downwards, so the shadows would be cast underneath, and that's sort of what I'm doing at the moment. Okay, so just go in there and just add that, and it just does really start to build up. So you can see even just by that you've got that shadow cast, but obviously it's not really a shadow, it's all to do with the paint work. So just go around here, just do exactly the same. So it's like a dry brush technique again. We just want to apply a fair bit of colour just so it really accentuates where the shadows would sort of like fall. So I'm quite pleased with how that's coming along. So I never ever, you know, wipe off any of my paints that I've mixed up until I know I'm completely utterly done with them. So just in there. Okay. And then just around there. Okay, right, so I'm just going to add a little bit more of this onto there, a little bit random this time. And there. And then looking at our little door we have there, again, probably just accentuate a little bit of shadowing just around the outer edge. Okay, so you may want to just build this up just very gradually, okay, so don't overdo it. Just keep on just going over. So it's almost just graduating that colour just inwards. Okay, so you can just see that. Okay. And then on the top as well. Just get rid of that little bit of white that we have on the door frame. Again, just keep on. Obviously, with a dry brush, you know, you don't want a nice brand new brush. Go for an old one that you've had knocking around for a long time. Okay, because the dry brushing technique does tend to ruin your brushes after not too long. Okay, so just go in there. Okay, so every so often just take a look at what you've done. There we go, that's coming along quite nicely there. Okay, so just a little bit more on the door down here, just on the bottom bit, almost as though, yeah, that's where dust would settle as such, so just on that bottom part there. Okay, there we go. Right, so that is our little door done, the frame's done around there. we have our bark. So now I think it's time to crack open some green paint now and start doing some of these ivy leaves and trailing vines that are coming down the side of our little house. So there's our ivy leaves there, all solid at the moment. So I'm just going to dry brush a little bit of white, okay, into the centre hopefully of those leaves. Okay, that's probably a little bit wet at the moment. Let's have a look. Okay, that's more like it. So literally just into the middle, going outwards. And this is what I was saying earlier, that the white almost goes transparent. It's almost taking on the green there, so it's actually going on almost like a light green, which is good. So just keep on just brushing that on. So it's really just to break up the solid colour. Okay, so it's just flicking so from the middle outwards, and straight away you can see there, that's the sort of effect that we're getting, which is pretty nice. Okay, so again using the dry brush technique, just going on there to just accentuate that detail. There we go. So the green down here, we're just going to add a little bit of black to that, okay, to darken that. So a little bit of black acrylic paint. Okay, let's have a look. I'm just going to mix that in with that brush there. So that's quite a bit darker now than it was first off. Okay, I think we can go even darker than that. Again, just a little bit on there, and again just give that a good old mix in, and then we'll be good to, that's it, there we go, that's a real darker tone now of that green. So again, I'm just going to use my brush that I always use for dry brushing. Okay, I just want to go just around the edges. You probably can't see too much of it, but it will just add to the overall effect. There we go. So again, it's all about just adding colour to add a little bit more depth to your project. Okay. There we go. You can just about see that. Sometimes it's nice to be like gradual with it as well. So it's, there we go. So I'm just going to go around all of those little ivy leaves there, just brushing on that darker colour. Okay. Don't worry, again, if it goes into the glass we can wipe that off like we did on the front door. And then just onto there. Okay, there we go. That's the ivy leaves done now. So now it's these trailing vines. I think I'm going to use the same colour as I've got here. I'm going to add a lighter green just to get almost... I'm not saying fluorescent, but this is the colour I'm going to be using, which is quite fluorescent in itself. So it's a real green, and hopefully that will do exactly what we want. So I'm just going to separate some of the darker colour. I'm just going to pop it there because I know that I want to dry brush over the top of that. So I'm just going to mix that in. Okay, so we've got a different colour green. I think that's what you've really got to make sure of, is that when it comes to the greens especially, you really want to keep on changing them so they're not all looking the same. we did that on the base as well. So it's a completely different colour green, which is great. So I'm just going to go in, I'm just going to paint these with that. There we go. Okay, there's the two vines or the ferns that I've got coming down there. I'm just going to give those a quick blast, and then I'm going to go over those with a slightly darker and lighter colour as well. Okay, so I'm just going to drag some of the dark colour that I saved from earlier. Okay, I'm just going to bring that down here. Okay, so we don't want it too different from what we've already got. It's in actual fact, you know, when you look at a fern, I'm pretty sure that they're near enough the same sort of like colour going all the way through. But this is obviously just a craft project, so you know, we have the artistic license, as they say. So let's just go over a bit of that. Okay. There. Not really sure it's doing that much. Okay. Let's bring it again back onto there. Okay, right, so dry that. Okay, so just pop that down one moment, clean my brush because I'm going to be using the white yet again. Okay, that's always my go-to after I've popped the colour on for dry brushing. I normally go over with a little bit of white just to help bring out some of that detail. So let's just grab some of that brush, and then there we go. Always helps just bring out some of that detail that's there. Okay. It's just onto there. I think you can just about see that. So this one hasn't got any. So again, just a little bit of that white. Just take some of that white off the brush there. Go. Okay, let's just go a little bit over that one again, just to bring, there we go, that's good. Just up there. Okay, we're good to go. Right, so the next part is these little, well, I don't know quite what they are, but they're trailing somethings, let's just say that. I think I'm going to keep this one quite dark, so I'm going to see if I can find like a purple or something on there, and we'll see what that looks like. So I've just mixed up a darker colour now, so literally just going to brush that in places. Okay, so just like here and there, just to break up the overall colouring that is already on those. They're almost like little berries, aren't they, hanging down there, trailing berries. Just to go in there, just add a little bit of difference. Okay. So again, I'm just using very little paint actually on the brush, just to add that little bit of depth to that. So just rejoin me as I'm just adding a little bit of white. Just keep on going over there just to build up the colour. There's hardly any paint on my brush, but it's just adding, as I think you'll see, just that little bit of a highlight to all of those, like trailing berries. Right, the next step is to do the roof. I think I will go for a purple, so I'm going to have to mix up some colour. In actual fact, I could go with this colour that's already here and just lighten it slightly. In actual fact, you know what? I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add some more of that, add a little bit of white, get a nice colour, and then we'll paint it on the top of our little roof. Right, so what I did was I actually used some of that sort of like grapey colour that we had. I added some black, but then I added some blue there to make it more of a purple colour. So I'm going to go on with the darkest colour first, just like we normally do. Okay, so that's the sort of like colour. It is quite dark, which I quite like, and then we can go back over that a little bit later with the white, and maybe that's like mixed in with the white to give us a almost sort of like a lilac-y colour. I'm just going to see how this coat goes first. So again, lead me to it and I will paint the roof, and then we'll come back and we'll do all of the dry brushing on top of that to see what sort of interesting effect we can actually achieve. So just going to grab some of that white. Okay, we're just going to pop that into the mix. Okay, there we go. Let's just give a good old mix in there. Okay, that should be enough to start our process of dry brushing, I think. Okay, just going to use my trusty brush once more. I'm surprised it hasn't worn out yet, to be honest. But we're just going to brush downwards. Okay, so we're just going to pick up on some of that detail. Okay, straight away. I don't know if you can see on there, that's bringing out what was quite a dark roof. Okay, so just going to keep on going down, really make sure I get a lot of the detail there. So not that I want to get rid of the original colour, but I really just do want to knock it back, because after this we're going to add some more white to that, and we're just going to keep on building up. So hopefully the actual finished flower on top of the roof is going to be quite light in colour, but we need that dark in the first place as the undercolour, because we just want like almost every petal to really stand out nicely on its own. Okay, so I'm just going to keep on just going over that. Okay, let's have a look. Just keep on stepping back from it every so often so you can see straight away, you know, we've really added a lot of light colour there, but we've still got some of that dark colour coming through. Okay, which is exactly what we want. So just keep on just brushing over and over that moulded area. As before, you know, you may want to go around twice, because after the first couple of minutes, you know, it will start to dry, and it does always have that tendency to lighten a little bit whilst it dries as well. Okay, so just go in there and just keep on doing that. So leave us to this, and I will go round a couple of times, and then we'll come back and we'll go on with an even lighter colour, just to hopefully then bring out even more detail to this little roof. So as you can see, I've added even more white now. So this was the original colour here, we've then got the other colour that we added. Now we're going really light indeed. Okay, so again, just pop that onto the brush, very little at a time, and then we're just going to just go over. I think I've got a little bit too much on the brush, so just keep on just going over this. So we're not completely obliterating any of the previous colours in their entirety, So it's just all about just adding another little colour onto that. Okay, so whoops, my brush looks like it's going to fly out of my hand. So just keep on going around. Okay, and you'll see again just that extra little bit of lighter colour is really going to give dimension to the whole flower. Okay, and just make every single one of those little petals just pop a little bit. Okay, so just keep on going around. So I'm just going to go in and do that. So let's have a look, just step back from it a moment. Okay, that's looking nice. You can see there all that detail is coming out. Right, the final step, as I do every single time, is just white. So I'm going to add a little bit of white over the entire roof there. Let me just, before I wipe the colours away, okay, I'm pretty happy with that. So we're just going to go on with the white. So there we go, that is our little fairy roof done. We've just got the very centre part to go. I think I'm going to possibly choose an orange colour for that. Let's have a look. I think we go orange, and then I think I'll brush over the top of it with possibly a yellow, just to tone it down for both, if that makes sense, and possibly a black as well. Let's have a look. So this is probably going to be very bright. Whoa, look at that, that is bright, but that's fine. Okay, so I'm just going to go round the very centre part of my little flower. Okay, just turn that round. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm probably not going to do the yellow, as I said. I think I'm going to go over with a darker shade of the orange. So we're going to add a little bit of black to it and see where that leads us, because I think it's probably going to tone it down more so than the yellow would. Okay, so just quickly just pop the colour in. Make sure you go into all of the nooks and crannies there, because originally I used like a pointy tool to make some of that detail to bring it back. Well, the majority was from the moulds. I did add a little bit because I felt that after time I kept on pressing on top there, I squashed some of the detail. So I just added some of it back in using a pointed tool. Okay, so nearly there with this. Just go in like so. Okay, we're nearly there. Okay, it's where glass on glass makes a lot of noise. So just keep on with that. Okay. So you can see, you know, just that little bit of gold is nice, makes it a little bit more magical. Okay, so just a little touch of it here and there, just to give that final finishing touch to the whole house. Although I say that because we've done all of the work on the actual house itself, but there's something we haven't done, and that's actually the glass, because we are going to do something a little bit special to that as well, which I shall show you in a little while. So I'm just going to carry on adding the gilding paint to this. Okay, and then we'll have a look at that glass just to see what we can do to that. So the final bit is the windows. Okay, now that, yes, they're glass, so we could leave them as they are, but I just want them to have a little bit of like a frosted effect. Okay, sort of like bumpy glass almost. So you could be using something like this, which is a 3D varnish from Pentart. You've got the one that everyone knows, which is Glossy Accents, or indeed 3D Lac from Viva Decor. Any of those are going to work perfectly. So what I've actually done, I have stuck my little jar here on a mould, just so it doesn't rock back and forth, so it's nice and stable. And then it's just a case of going in there with your chosen product, okay, and like I say, I'm going to use the 3D Lac here from Viva. So literally I'm just going to squeeze this into position, okay, and I'm purposely doing it so it's going to give sort of like a bumpy type glass. I think you can just about see that. Okay, so you've got to be on quite a flat surface. So in this case, as I just mentioned, the mould is absolutely brilliant for that. So I'm just going to go in there and I'm going to pop in that product there and then just dot it about a bit, just so it's not perfect. And do you know what, even some air bubbles in there would be quite nice as well. So there we go, that's the sort of effect. So it's going to take a couple of hours to dry. Once that's done, I'll be back to do the front door as well, and then I'll have one more look and possibly decide whether I want to add anything else, but you know, we'll see. And then we could well be finished after we do the front door there. But that is the little window in the side as it stands. A little bit of bumpy glass there just to add to the realism of our little fairy house. So we'll leave that to dry and then we'll be back to do the final bit, that is the front door. So this little window has dried enough, and if I just turn it around you can actually see what the glass looks like. Okay, so that's obviously nice and shiny, but this gives that sort of like slightly uneven glass effect, which I think is really, really nice. So I'm just going to turn that round now, and I'm going to do exactly the same to this. So just making sure that everything is going to stay put. Like I say, we're just going to move the mould along there. Just going to turn that round. Okay, like so. And then we're going to use the same product. So I'm using the 3D Lac from Viva again, just to mottle that glass, just to make it a little bit more interesting. Okay. So just keep on pouncing the glass. This does actually dry like sort of like the pearl pens, so you can create some depth with it if you should so wish. I may actually do 2 layers on this because this is sort of like quite a thick infill here on this glass. It's probably about 1/2 centimetre or so thick. So again, I've done it so it's really uneven, so it's going to give that mottled type of effect. So once again, we'll leave that to dry. We'll come back to it in a couple of hours and we'll see what we've got. So I'm just going to add the finishing touch here by adding the second layer to our little window up there. So just to give it a little bit more texture and depth, because this window, as you can see, it does go quite deep into the door. So it's just basically just to fill out that space that we have in there. So I'm just going to go around and do that. There we go. So it doesn't take too long. but it takes quite a time for this to dry, but it's all worth it. It's all worth it. Let's just tap that big air bubble out and just give it a little bit of texture around there. Okay, just have a look around there, make sure we've got it all covered, which we have now, and then just go over it just to help add some more texture in, because the 3D lac, very similar to glossy accents, will keep its dimension once it's dried. So I think that's probably going to be enough. I'm going to leave that to dry now, and then we'll come back and we'll have a look at the final project completed. So that is the project completely finished off. I just did another coat of the 3D lac in the glass there, just so it makes it a little bit more textured than normal glass would be. So that's quite nice, and also it was in that window there. So as you can see, all of the detail there really does come to life with all of those different dry brush painting techniques that we did over the entire house, and obviously on the roof itself and on the base. So now all I need to do is just connect it up. So it was a jam jar, as I said in the first instance, so I left all like the screw mechanism free, so then I could lock it into the base. That's also got the lid, so basically it's the jar upside down. That goes into there. I give it a quick twist, and there is our little fairy house all in one. So that's how I created that. Hope you enjoyed this particular video from myself, and I hope you can join me again real soon. Thank you so much for watching. Take care and happy crafting.